Welcome to the Humanities Team podcast with me, Steve Farrell. Humanities Team is an international spiritual movement whose purpose is to communicate and demonstrate the timeless truth that we are all one, with the divine and all life, caring for each other and the world we share, so that people's actions reflect this profound understanding within our generation. We believe that living this truth is essential to resolving the most chronic and acute world challenges and vital to creating a flourishing world of peace, harmony, and happiness. We offer transformative education programs in personal and spiritual development, and we host an annual event called Global Oneness Day. Similar to Earth Day, which galvanized the global environmental movement, Global Oneness Day has become a catalyst for spiritual activism and an integral part of the present-day global oneness movement, which represents a profound new paradigm in human culture. Humanities Team is the only global nonprofit organization working in transformational education. Since we are a nonprofit, there is no focus on growing profits or satisfying shareholders, and 100% of all revenue goes toward our work supporting conscious evolution, planetary awakening, and flourishing at every level of life. If you'd like to learn more about us or want to support our mission directly through donation or volunteering some of your time, please visit us online at humanitiesteam.org. And lastly, if you enjoyed this podcast, we'd be grateful if you'd leave us a review.
I am so excited about our special guests for this hour. They are pioneers and leaders in conscious loving. This is the first time we've had them on a program with Humanities Team, and we are so excited. I'm going to introduce them now. Katie Hendricks, Ph.D., is the CEO and Director of Training for the Hendricks Institute, an international learning organization that teaches core skills of conscious living through a unique whole-body approach to quantum coaching. Her explorations of the catalytic power of the creative arts and psychotherapy and organizational systems have been featured in many magazines, journals, and books. She received her doctorate in psychology in 1982 and has been a board-certified member of the American Dance Therapy Association since 1975. She has consulted and taught in the graduate programs of many universities and has an international reputation as a seminar leader for health and business professionals. She is the co-author of 10 books, including Conscious Loving, The Conscious Heart, At the Speed of Life, and Lasting Love. And welcome, Katie, and I'll introduce your husband next.
Thank you.
And next, Gay Hendricks, Ph.D. Gay Hendricks is the author and co-author of over 30 books in conscious relationship, conscious business, and body-mind transformation. Included are such enduring bestsellers as Conscious Loving, The Corporate Mystic, Conscious Breathing, Conscious Living, and 5 Wishes. Before founding his own institute, he was a professor of counseling for 21 years at the University of Colorado, where he began teaching in 1974, shortly after receiving his doctorate from Stanford University. Over the past 29 years of their relationship, he and Katie have raised 2 children, accumulated 1 million frequent flyer miles, and appeared on more than 500 radio and television programs. And welcome to the Living in Oneness Summit, Gay and Katie Hendricks. It's so great to have you with us.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. Great being with you, too.
Well, I shared earlier, you might have heard us talk a little bit about one of their books. Of course, they've written so many, but one of the books that I have just loved is this book called Conscious Loving, The Journey to Co-Commitment. I mentioned earlier, by the way, my wife is listening in because we feel we have much that we can learn from the Hendricks. At the beginning of this book, in Chapter 1, as the book opens up, it says, for most of us, relationships are a struggle. We each have a strong inner urge toward conscious loving, toward love relationships that are free of mistrust, disharmony, and unspoken words. We want our relationships to be springboards to higher consciousness and enhanced creative expression. And it goes on. But it begins with this aspect of, for most of us, relationships are a struggle. I thought that might be a good place to start as we come into this session.
For most people, I think that is true, although we're noticing in recent years that people are more willing to consider having relationships that don't have to start in struggle.
Well, another thing, though, is that most of us grew up around a lot of folks who were struggling in their relationships, so it's kind of like it's to be expected in a way. I know folks in my family had a lot of pretty unusual relationships and unusual ways of communicating. I remember my grandmother wouldn't speak to either of my aunt's husbands, and it led to a lot of awkward things at the dinner table where she would have to say, Audrey, would Bob like some string beans? And anyway, most of us come from a history of kind of entangled communication patterns, and so it's really a heroic effort for anyone to want to jump out of that and create something brand new. So anyone that struggled with relationships, including ourselves, has our heartfelt compassion and respect.
One of the other things that we've noticed and we continue to notice is that people have training in all kinds of things, like, for example, how to drive a car, but we have yet to find a lot of people who got any training in how to create thriving relationships. That certainly doesn't happen in school. And so one of the reasons we wanted to create a pathway for people is to experiment with what really works. What's a relationship map that really works for people? And that's what we share, is the things that we found that really worked in our own relationship and that we've used, again, with thousands of people. But it really started with our question about, wow, what would it look like to create a thriving relationship? What would be required in order to have a relationship that didn't run on struggle, that wasn't just hard work and conflict? And that's kind of where we started, and we started experimenting and then sharing what we had learned and what's really worked for us.
Fantastic. Well, gosh, we've really talked about, we've got the starting line out in the open, and now we have the ending line out in the open. Perfect. I love it. Sharing, and that it's normal to have these, what you call entangled communications patterns, and I love the word entangled coming in because, of course, oneness, we've got scientists talking about our entanglement, that's what oneness is. So quantum physics says that there's an entangled reality in oneness, but our communications can become entangled too. And that's not abnormal. So perfect. Well, we've got, again, the starting line of where maybe many of us begin, and then we have this destiny that's so beautiful, creating a thriving relationship. I know you all step through this material quite often, so I'd like to just let you maybe be spirit-guided as we start. I'm going to bring in aspects of oneness because your book, all of your material, but this one book, Conscious Loving, The Journey to Co-Commitment, talks explicitly about oneness. It's beautiful. So I'll bring in some of those references in a little bit. But first, let's get started just with how you help people start from where they are, where things can maybe not be exactly what we want, and then step into the thriving relationship that you all help coach people to.
Wonderful. Well, what we noticed and continue to notice is that the gateway is commitment. And so many people have a misunderstanding about the power of commitment, that commitment, they think of it as a way to that kind of imprisons you or gives you fewer choices, or they think of commitment as something that they have to do perfectly or it's all over. And we've noticed that when you genuinely commit, that is, you step wholeheartedly with your whole body into the direction that you want to go, it's the best way to guide yourself from where you are to where you want to be, but it's also a great place to come home to, because we notice that commitment is not only a way to orient yourself, it's also something that you can recommit to. So if you're having struggle in your relationship, you can be considering, what is it that I really want? So most people think they have to dig themselves out and then they can have what they want. And we've noticed that it's exactly the opposite, that if you dream up what you really want, like I want to have a relationship that allows both of us to celebrate and to support each other's creativity, then the first step is to actually commit to that. I commit to creating a relationship where we both enjoy and celebrate each other's creativity. And then when you slip off that commitment, you recommit rather than beating yourself up or saying, boy, that didn't work. You simply commit and then recommit.
Wow, I love it. That is not, that's not intuitive. The things that I've been exposed to this point have not necessarily focused on this. It certainly is a fun way to begin the journey, isn't it? To, at the beginning, just dream up what we want, as you share, and then be explicit to talk about that and celebrate and appreciate it, and just get on your journey to manifesting it, huh?
Yes, we have. Now that we've been together almost 35 years now, and during that whole period of time, we've been seeing couples as well as singles in our offices as well as our seminars, and we found that there are certain common elements, certain things that everybody needs to do. One of them is to learn how to make a meaningful commitment, how to say to another person, I commit to showing up as more appreciative of you, or I commit to stop gambling without telling you, or whatever the commitment is. The ability to make a meaningful, sincere commitment, that's a huge skill. And if you think about it, most of us haven't ever had any training in how to do that. Another thing that's really crucial in relationships, if you want to have a relationship, you have to learn to speak honestly. You need to learn how to be honest with yourself, but also speak honestly about your feelings to the other person in a way that is communicative, not destructive. And so you need to get good at saying simple things like, I'm scared, or I'm sad, or I'm angry, or, here's what I want, or things that are communications from the heart. Most of us, again, don't get any training in how to make those kind of communications to another person. And so it's kind of like our training in relationships for most of us would be equivalent to if somebody, when you were 16, just tossed you some car keys and said, okay, you can figure it out. Just get behind the wheel and get out there and bash around a little bit, and you'll eventually figure out how to do it. Maybe our insurance rates would be even higher than they already are. But it's basically, we've talked to, I don't know how many thousands of people around the world now, and we ask them, how much training have you ever had in relationships? And for most of us, between 0 and 10 minutes. Sometimes we'll have a person stick up their hand and say they went to some kind of special school where the kids all sat around and talked about communication skills and things like that. But that's pretty darn rare in the era that we grew up in. So we need to be very open-hearted and forgiving of all the mistakes we've made in relationships. We need to admit our mistakes into the oneness of ourselves, and then in the present say, what is it I really want now? Regardless of whatever's happened in the past, what I want now is, and then go about the business of inventing that. That's what Katie and I did 35 years ago. We decided to invent a relationship that didn't have any blame and criticism in it.
Yeah, we decided to create a relationship that ran primarily on positive energy. And here's the thing with a commitment, is that you have really no idea how to create it. And so it's a wonderful way of stepping off into the unknown, but really moving from what it is that you most want. And the power of commitment actually allows you, it's kind of like an airplane. We have it on good authority now that an airplane gets to where it's going by committing, gets on track, and then it goes off track, and then back on track. So it's going off track and then correcting and drifting and correcting, and it gets to where it's going by being wrong 99% of the time. So because an airplane just auto-corrects, it's something that we would like all humans to learn how to do, is instead of beating yourself up when you drift, is simply recommit and then start acting toward what you really want.
Oh, I love that. I love it. So you've brought in that, as you mentioned, that the training that we've had in relationships is 0 to 10 minutes in our lifetime if we're like most people, but that there's a simple process, and now you use this example of like airplanes where we just auto-correct. We don't have to be hard on ourselves. It doesn't have to be heavy. It can be light and fun. Let me just bring in, we do have comments and questions coming in from listeners. We'll get to these, including Luca in Santa Fe brought in a question. We'll get to that here in just a moment. If you're on Instant Teleseminar, I invite you to put your name, city, and country in the question window so we can bring in your energy. We'll get to at least a couple of questions during the hour. So as we get started, I love this, the things that you've shared. Make a meaningful commitment to get things started. And then you mentioned speak honestly about our feelings and communicate in a way that's not destructive, and instead communicate from the heart in a positive, constructive way. And then you brought in oneness. So we're bringing in oneness here, admitting our mistakes into oneness. Which is bringing in the whole aspect of oneness and the divine and so on. And I'm guessing, just from reading your material, Gay and Katie, that this helps us immensely, doesn't it, when we bring in the aspect of the divine, because the divine is so healing and loving and compassionate. And for me, when I bring the divine into anything, into my own life, into my relationship with my wife and my kids at work, etc., it can't help but just have this healing, loving quality.
Yeah, it's really so important. And a big question we all have to ask ourselves in relationship and with ourselves is, how did we first stop feeling divine? And how did we stop first seeing other people as divine? Because a lot of times in life, it takes a long time to find the divine in ourselves. And so I'm always interested in finding out, where did we first fall out of love with ourselves so much that we rejected ourselves as being the very signs of God, the very signs of the divinity present? And, for many of us, it starts very early on. There was once a study I read that was fascinating to me where the experimenters hung little voice-activated microphones around the neck of kindergarten kids as they were playing at school and as they went home, and they basically monitored what was said to them over a 24-hour period for a week. And then they analyzed all the communications to the kids, and 85% of the communications were negative statements, like stop doing that, quit that, if you don't stop doing that, I'm going to, but I was stunned by the fact that the preponderance of what comes in our ears a lot of times is on the negative. And so it's very easy, given that, to stop thinking of yourself as worthwhile protoplasm, as holy substance, if you're constantly being criticized.
Another aspect of that we've noticed in our work is that human beings for thousands of years have really been wired up for survival to notice what's wrong, where is the next threat coming from. And those people who successfully noticed where the next threat was coming from, those are our ancestors. And so for thousands of years, we've really been accustomed to struggling and to really putting all of our attention into survival. It's very, very recently in history that we've really had enough space and time and success as humans to be able to look at other issues like giving and receiving more love and appreciation with each other. And this is what we call the upper limit problem, that we each have a thermostat setting really for how much love and positive energy our nervous systems can actually handle. And that one of the evolutionary functions of humans on the planet today is to actually expand our capacity for enjoying things going well. Because one of the places that shows up is in relationships. We noticed early on in our relationship is that we'd really be enjoying each other's company and we'd be laughing and dancing together, and then one of us would criticize the other or one of us would give the other a look, or we would realize that we would bring ourselves back down. We'd feel good, and then we'd do something to feel bad. And we started looking at that as a central problem in relationship, to allow our relationships to be a vehicle for expanding our ability to give and receive more love every day.
I wanted to also hark back to something we said earlier about the commitment to clear blame and criticism out of our relationship. We both came from very critical backgrounds, and we found ourselves criticizing each other a lot in the early days of our relationship, so we decided to make this commitment to something really, really bold that we had never seen before, a commitment to eliminate blame and criticism and replace it only with positive energy and appreciation. And so when we made that commitment, we had no idea if we could do it, but if you're making a big enough commitment, that's what you ought to be committing yourself to, is something you're not sure you can do, that's something that's going to pull the very best out of you. And it took us literally years to finally make good on that commitment, because we would go for a week or two without criticizing each other, and then one of us would erupt into that, and so we would fall off the wagon and recommit many times, hundreds of times probably, until one day, a few years down the line, we woke up and realized, wow, we haven't said a critical word to each other in years. And as of this point, actually, one thing we like to say is, here it is, the 21st century, we haven't had an argument in this century.
Fantastic. Wow. Well, we're into some really rich material here. I'm going to go to a question here in 1 second, this question that came in from Luca in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I would just want to share, though, again, we're just in a really rich part of this discussion. I love what you're bringing in. Certainly we'll go deeper into this upper limit problem, which you've healed, because, here we are in 2014, and you haven't had a challenging, or you probably had challenging moments, but not critical moments in the new since 2000 or since 2010 in any
2000. By this century, I mean since the turn of the century.
Yeah. Since the turn of the century, so that's saying something. I want to bring in too. You started out earlier, Gay, bringing in. When did we stop seeing ourselves as part of the divine? And you mentioned it takes so long sometimes to get in touch with this aspect of divinity, of godliness. And, of course, this is where the humanities team comes from. Our whole thing is about awakening ourselves and the world of oneness, because where we get in touch with the divine within and just that loving energy and compassionate energy and all forgiving energy and all these beautiful things, healing energy, it just allows us to have a sublime life and to bring that to our significant other relationships. So it occurs to me that where you have this, where your own relationship is based in oneness and this divine presence, and where your coaching brings this in, it just seems like you could go so much further faster. We'll talk about that here in a moment. But here's the question from Luca in Santa Fe. She says, my husband and I are about to have an empty nest. We have 7 children, and our twin daughters are leaving for college next fall. So I guess these are their last 2, their twin daughters leaving for college next fall. We would welcome information on recommitting.
Oh, beautiful.
Great question. Well, that's a very timely one, too, because at the moment we're busily at work on our new book, which is a sequel to Conscious Loving for people in relationships from 45 and beyond, up into the 50s, 60s, and 70s primarily. And so we've done a lot of thinking about that. Well, one suggestion is to do a complete reevaluation of what it is you really love to do most of all. Because if you think about it, if you have 7 kids, you've been doing things for other people for a very, very, very long time. And so you're out of practice. And so you need to subject yourself to a rigorous period of a bunch of meetings, sit down and have a meeting about it, about what do we want to do next? What do we want to do for each other, for ourselves, what's our own growth path, what's each other's, how can we support each other's growth path. So do a complete kind of like 50,000-mile tune-up, where you really take apart the machinery and put it back together again. I've recommended that to many, many, many couples, and nobody's ever come back and said it was not useful. So I really think that's a valuable thing you could definitely take 3 or 4 hours to do right now, and it would make a huge difference over the next 10 years or so.
At least, and it would be great to do that too sometimes while you're out on a walk, sometimes while you're listening to music, sometimes where you each go into a different part of the house and you write some things down, and then you come back and share them with each other. And to put an emphasis also, Luca, on what it is that you most love to do. So I'm imagining from what I'm hearing is that you've had a life that's been of service and has really been contributing. And how about turning that whole wave of attention back towards yourself? What would really delight you? What if you were engaged and it would make time disappear for you? And to put a focus also, one of the things that Gay and I have taken a look at and really put a big time focus on is what's something new that I could learn? Because whether it's at a physical level, so each of us have learned new things, to new kinds of exercise and new ways of using our bodies that have really created more flexibility and resilience. What's something you might want to learn in the arts? You might want to create a new business. You might want to create something together. You might want to travel more to different parts of the world where you might be able to make a contribution. So there's literally the sky's the limit. But I think to come back to appreciating yourself and noticing what would really delight me, because when you're in this part of your life, it really is important to put a focus on your creativity, because you're going to have all this free time now. And so if you're not putting it into creativity, you're likely to generate more issues and problems. I remember when my folks were older, my dad was an engineer, and without a problem to solve, his life really got pretty unstructured. And so if you're not creating new and better problems for yourself, you're going to tend to devolve to the ones that are familiar.
And you'll need to dream up an entirely new relationship with your kids, too.
Yeah, very good point.
Yeah, and here's a suggestion. Ask each of them to send you $10 a day, and then in return you'll send them a postcard from some cool place in the world every month. A new solution to the older years.
Oh, I love that. Wow. Well, boy, you make empty nesting sound so fun. I love it. To really, turn this, like you say, parenting is service work. Wow, it's huge service work. 7 kids. I myself grew up with 7. I have 7 siblings, so a lot of work. Especially my mother was a single mother. That's a whole other conversation. She's probably listening in now too. Truly extraordinary woman. But I love that. Turn it around. It's our time now to have fun. And then here at the end, dream up a new relationship with your kids. And the suggestion, spend $10 and we'll send postcards from where we're going. Wonderful. Let me bring in a comment here. Laura from Denver is just saying a comment. She says, thank you, much love, with lots of exclamation marks. Laura from Denver, thank you for bringing that in. I want to go back to the upper limit problem, because I think a lot of people probably can relate to that, of just growing up in homes where there wasn't gushing love everywhere, and in fact they could be quite critical, as you shared your homes were that you grew up in, and so it's a kind of a foreign thing where we're so loving and appreciative and understanding and forgiving with each other. You clearly healed that in your own marriage. And I'm going to guess this might be an opportunity to bring in this aspect of oneness and the divine. I'm going to guess that played a role. Can we talk a little bit about that, just your own processes for living in oneness and the divine, and how the divine bathes you, or whatever words you use to describe how the divine has helped to bring you together closer, and maybe also help your own lives to just be more fulfilling individually?
Well, a couple of things about that. First of all, we both meditate every day, and we often meditate together if we're up at the same time, or if we're, mostly when we're in town here together. So I would say that 90% of the time we meditate together during the day. So that's a very helpful thing. But also I want to give the divine a big shout out for actually bringing us together, because Katie is an answer to a prayer I made. It was one of the few times in my life I've actually kind of sat down and gotten my mind and my body and spirit all together and said, okay, universe, here is exactly what I want. And so I launched that request. I wanted three things. I wanted a relationship in which both people could be absolutely honest, and I wanted a relationship in which both people were committed to their creative path, and I wanted a relationship in which both of us would take responsibility for things rather than engaging in a lot of whose fault is it. And so I sent that prayer out into the universe in December 1979, and I attached a little rider to the prayer. I said, if for some reasons it's not in the cards for me to have this kind of relationship in this lifetime, for whatever reason, I can understand that. I'll be happy to live by myself if it's not in the cards for me, but I promise you this, I'll never settle for less. So don't bother sending me anything but the absolute best candidate for what I'm looking for. and so I was in that kind of mood. I really kind of cracked the whip on the universe. And so I then sat back and went about my business, and guess what? A month later, less than a month later, I walked into a room of about 50 people, and I saw somebody who looked like they had kind of like a aura around them, and one thing led to another, and I had a great conversation with her, and that was 34 years ago, and we're still together. And so I say that she's an answer to a prayer, so I credit the divine for everything. The very origin of our relationship was so tied up and drenched with divinity for me that I could never think of it in any other way.
Oh, I love that. Gosh, and I'm guessing, I myself, and I'm guessing all the listeners can totally relate to that. Maybe with their significant other, maybe not, but just in so many parts of our life, haven't we all done that, where we just pray to God in the deepest way and just say, God, this is really where I am, and this is my desire. And just put it out there in a deeply authentic way, such as the way that you did, and then to have it show up. And in fact, my life, I would say every chapter has been like this, where that led to this, and then to this, and then to that, and to my wife, to my kids. So our kids are adopted, and because my wife and I had this calling in today's world to adopt our kids, and they're open adoption, so really neat where the birth parents are involved too. And we were absolutely brought the perfect kids. Stephanie and I have these kids, age 9 and 12, Dylan and Sophie, who, as we share with them, they came through other mothers' tummies, and of course they have a relationship with those birth moms, but they're just the perfect kids for us. And I love this too, because it's our we can shout out to God here, and say, hey, thank you, God, wow, because life can be so good, and this is all we need to do, isn't it? To really just put it out there for the divine and say, in the case of our marriage partner, I'm ready, and to lay out the criteria as you did, and I love that you said, and nothing less, just perfection itself, and then within a month, my God, Katie walks into the room with this aura around her, and you've been married 34 years. Incredible.
Yeah, and we also, we pretty much summed up our whole relationship in our first minute of communicating with each other, because Katie came across the room to ask me a question about something, and I said to her, before she could even open her mouth, I said, I feel attracted to you, and I don't know if we're going to ever know each other beyond this moment, but I just wanted to let you know that I really appreciate what I see of you, and I'm very attracted to you, and I'd love to ask you out for a cup of coffee, but I do want to let you know that I just decided a month ago that I only want to have relationships where both people are committed to honesty, and both people are committed to taking responsibility for their lives, and both people are really committed to their own creative path. And so on those terms, would you like to have a cup of coffee with me?
And it took me about 15 seconds because I really knew this was a call directly to me from the divine. And so it took me about 15 seconds, and I came back with, how about lunch?
Yeah, she upped the ante.
I upped the ante.
Yeah, well, these divine inspirations, just keep them coming, huh? Because that's what it is. Yeah, just tapping into that energy.
Yeah, you have to take the big leap. I mean, in a situation like that, it was equally likely that she would hit me over the head with a handbag, and say, wait a minute, get out of here. But fortunately, she said, how about lunch? And I even remember that we had deviled eggs for lunch, if I remember correctly.
Yes, we did.
Egg salad kind of thing.
That's and that continues to be one of Gay's favorite items. So, we really, what we're talking about, Steve, reminds me that we really think that close relationship, is one of our best vehicles for uncovering essence, that what we really can support each other in doing is uncovering the divinity that is at the heart of each of us, and that what happens for most of us is that essence, who we really are, simply gets covered over in life with the different expectations, the different struggles, the different patterns that have been passed down to us through many, many generations, and that as we keep choosing love, and as we are real with each other, and we share ourselves with each other, and we learn how to take genuine responsibility to move from blame to wonder, and when we put a focus on creativity, those central things that we've been exploring over decades, that what happens is that we get to be more and more ourselves, and more of who we can be as completely fulfilled human beings. And that's one of the great gifts of close relationship.
Oh, gosh, isn't that the truth? I love that. I love that. And honesty, responsibility, and the creative just as key stepping stones here to a beautiful relationship. And then, as you said, getting in touch, uncovering our essence and the divinity that's at the heart of each of us. And just you laid out this journey where we're just stepping, in divinity, in our essence, in this God-loving presence that is at the core of, and that is all of us. What's very natural then is that we just become honest and we share, and we, even though we become vulnerable as we share, but we know we're safe because in God's presence we're always safe. And then, of course, as we continue on this journey, we get to just this really incredibly fulfilling place, such as what you've described. We do have comments and questions now starting to pour in. I knew this would happen. So let me just bring in. One. This is from, Christine in Atlanta. She says, my husband died very suddenly just over 4 months ago. We were having troubles at the time of his death. How can I recommit to my husband even though he is no longer physically here? I think this would help me with the grieving process.
Well, it sounds like there may be a conversation, at least a conversation that she would want to have with her husband about what was unspoken at the time of his dying, what she really feels, what she's noticing, what she regrets. That would be a great doorway into then what she most appreciates. We find that genuinely appreciating, being sensitively aware of, and focusing primarily on the positive is a wonderful bridge to recreate the sense of wholeness that she can continue experiencing.
Yes, and we've had many experiences in our own lives as well as people we've worked with. One powerful thing that I would really recommend that I've done myself is a graveside visit, a conscious graveside visit. Like I'll tell you the one that I did with my mother. My mother died in such a way that I didn't feel closure with her in many ways, and so a lot of things that were unsaid and unheard and that kind of thing. So I really kind of made a big list of them one time and then took them to her graveside, and I just had that kind of conversation about raising those questions and asking her what her life had been like in certain times and things that I was never able to communicate with her about in actual life. But it felt, and I've had other people that we've recommended do this, say that they felt a kind of a lightness afterwards that they hadn't felt before, and that was certainly my experience. And I think it's very natural for you to have things keep coming up. And I would recommend that you maybe keep a journal or a pad by your bed and near you so that you can write down these things and keep a journal of this year particularly, because it takes quite a while to move through all the different levels of things that you need to move through, especially if the relationship was feeling troubled at the time of his passing.
Yes, that sounds like a great idea. Journaling can be so healing, and of course the divine is the ultimate in healing, and this person is now in the divine's hands. So we can often feel energy at a whole different level after their passing. Let me just mention we do need to have, we've got a hard stop at the top of the hour because all of this is being recorded and transcripted, etc. So at 10:55 Pacific time, we'll go into the wrap-up. So we've got about, 14 minutes. Let me bring in just a few more things. There was another person that came in, Angela, in Anniston, Alabama. Just wanted to bring in that her husband, that they were also answers to each other's prayers, that she says they sent out specific prayers to each other, and they found each other. So she says, I love this, exclamation mark, that she had the same experience with her husband.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations.
Yes,
That's
and many blessings to Anniston, Alabama. My beloved grandmother, who raised me, came from that territory, and so all glory to Anniston, Alabama, and the environs.
There's a comment and a question. Let me bring in, I think this is a comment first. This is Monica in Frankfurt, Germany. Says, what I love about listening to this summit is the incredible feeling of light inside of me and the bubbles of joy rising to the surface and feeling so connected to the whole world. Thank you for such a brilliant way of showing how easy it is to live the oneness with everyone, not only in this world but beyond as well. It is the divine food for the soul. Wow, Monica, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Oh, gosh.
She's hearing the music as well as the words.
We are happy campers reading that comment. Thank you. This Lonnie in Gold Beach, I'm going to bring this one in because I suspect, you probably run into a lot of this, Gay and Katie, that Lonnie shares, what about the marriage with yourself and the divine? Because she says, I have no children, nor husband, and I'm not even dating. It makes me feel not as normal or, quote, good, unquote, when I kept hearing how to be healthy. She says, I need sex several times a week and things. Why can't we desire closeness with oneness and not have to be intimate and not have to have intimate relationships? Any insights? So she's just bringing in the aspect of can we, as where we're not in a relationship, a physical relationship with somebody here, can we create this kind of ecstasy, in our life?
Well, first and foremost, whether you're in a relationship with another human being or a pet or a painting or whatever, first and foremost, you're in relationship with the divine, with the cosmos. This is us, and we're either celebrating that moving within ourselves or we're not. And so the way I think of it is our first duty is to make love to the universe in ourselves, to make love to the life force in ourselves and make sure that we're making love at all times with the divine life force in ourselves. Then extend that to other people too, because a lot of us our problem in relationships is we don't love ourselves very well inside, so we look for somebody else to try to do it for us. And that sets up a negative spiral where nobody can ever love you enough unless you've deeply honored and loved yourself. And so what we need to do is make sure we're making love with the universe and ourselves first, and then put our attention on the quality of our love making with other people, if we so choose. And there's no obligation to have another intimate relationship with a human being. The only thing is that I think at the end of our days, we're called upon to answer the question, did I go to the fullness of my ability to love? Whatever that looked like, whether it was in a priesthood or in a marriage or whatever it was, or maybe with your work. But did I bring forth my full ability to love and to let myself be loved? That's the big metric we should invite ourselves to hold for ourselves.
Wow. Huh. Gosh, do I love that. You put two together here, and that we don't love ourselves very well often, so we look to someone else to do it for us. And isn't that so often something major that really needs to be looked at? And then this invitation, did I go to the fullness of my ability to love and to let others love me? Perhaps the thing, as we consider our so-called pine box, did I invite that? Did I allow that? Did I bring that into my life? The fullness of my ability to love and let myself be loved. So extraordinary. Gosh.
It was so wonderful, Steve, that I took my elbow and knocked over a glass of water onto a bunch of papers and did my own little upper limit move here. So I'm taking a towel and cleaning up while we're talking.
Yeah, well, me too. We on Sunday we've got our wrap-up program, and Dee Meyer, John Thomas, and I, and all of these other amazing leaders for Humanities Team that have made this possible are going to try and just bring in these jaw-dropping moments. And certainly this is one of them. And it just, you're bringing us right back to oneness, what this summit is about, this where we say that so often, we look outside of ourselves for love because we don't have it for ourselves. And it really, this is a key thing we focus on in Humanities Team. It all has to start with ourself, with that aspect of going within and connecting with the divine through meditation or walking in nature or prayer or whatever the way might be. But it's that connecting with the divine and being bathed in that energy of the divine that we become whole and healed and just where this energy, this bubbly energy that was referenced by this listener, where we bring it into our life and we can carry it around with us all day. And, of course, then it attracts a mate, especially where we bring out these specific prayers, such as the prayer that brought you two together. Really from the heart, deep, authentic prayer that says, I'm at that, it's that time now, and I'm ready for that perfect mate. And then in your case, in 30 days, the person walks through the door. So it does all start with ourself. I just want to bring that in. It's such an important part of Humanities Team and what we see to be, living in oneness. Just that it was our founder, of course, is Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote the Conversations with God books, and in those 9 books it said over and over again, if we don't go within, we go without, and which is a pretty simple but profound statement. If we don't go within, we go without. So that aspect of making the time in today's overstimulated world where we have all these digital devices to really quiet that world around us and go within and connect with that divine energy and let it bathe us and heal us and love us, etc., express through us. We can't, I don't want to be speaking for you all, but it just seems, as I think you said, Gay, we can't really have a healthy relationship based in the divine unless we've first done that with ourselves.
That's right. And, the divine is here before we are, in a sense, that it's, kind of like water to a fish. And it's amazing that it takes us sometimes a long time to kind of realize the water we're swimming in, the divine experience we're actually having all the time. That's our natural birthright. And in relationship too, you know, like I had to sort of make every mistake I could possibly make, I think, in my teens and my 20s in relationships until I could get to that point in my 30s where I could sit down and say, okay, what do I really want? You know, what is it that's sacred to me? And now we have people come to our seminars all the time who are, you know, 15 years old or 25 years old that are able to ask those same questions at a much earlier age than I did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing.
Very encouraging.
It's very encouraging to see somebody, you know, we just had a, you know, person who was 17, 18 years old sitting down there in a seminar figuring out what she wanted in a close relationship, and then to, you know, to get postcards from her. She went away to college then, and to hear postcards from her about how that's manifested. You know, it's the most exciting thing to see people coming into new kinds of love in their lives and opening up to their capacity for love.
Yeah, and so neat that I'm guessing, because you said it was recent, that this is in the evolution of your instruction and retreats and seminars and things. This is something that's newer, where people are showing up, where they're saying, what do they really want, and bringing in the aspect of what is sacred in me. This whole deeper spiritual or soul level conversation that's now coming into this whole discussion of our relationship with our significant other.
And one of the unique features about how we go about it is we come from a body-centered background where we've studied things like breathing and movement, and Katie's one of the original dance movement therapists in the United States to be certified. So we come at this from a body perspective, and really that's so important because a lot of these things need to be resolved and felt in your body. Like, you know, it's one thing to think about the divine, but it's another thing to feel divine in every cell of your body. And so we're always working with people to have that whole body down in the cells sense of their divinity. So it becomes a living thing just like each breath they take. And so that's always our goal. And one of the beautiful things about the human being is that even if we've been out of touch with that we've had people come in our seminars, you know, who are 70, 75 years old and rebirth their relationships right there on the spot, just like a person, you know, in their 20s is doing the same thing. And so it's so exciting to see that it doesn't matter what you've been through in your life or your life experience. There's always this moment of possibility.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love your practice. I'm glad you brought that in, that you come from this body perspective. And, of course, life being embodied, it is about what's being felt, not what we're just understanding up in our heads. And you say to feel the divine in every cell of our body, our whole body, down into all of our cells. Can you talk a little bit more about that? We have about 3 minutes before we go into the wrap-up, and that is beautiful, and I think it'll be very instructive to everyone.
Well, we really consider that divinity is a wholeness, and that people can experience their wholeness and recover their wholeness. We put a focus on embodied integrity. Integrity actually means wholeness, and by practicing the specific skills that we have noticed and developed in how to communicate honestly, how to actually be authentic, how to listen generously to other people so that you're hearing their feelings and what they really want, what's embedded in between the words, and how to open up to really being genuinely responsible for your life with a sense of wonder. You actually reclaim your creativity by doing that. And so these things that may sound esoteric are actually very practical magic kinds of skills that allow you to have the ongoing experience of not only creating but recreating and finding more and more of your wholeness and seeing your partner as whole, learning together and moving along together on the same path where there's room for each of you to be creatively fulfilled as individuals, but there's also this whole new area, the space between you, the genius of your relationship that really begins to express itself more and more so that other people around you are inspired just simply by being in your presence. And we think that that's a possibility for each relationship. The uniqueness of your relationship, your embodied wholeness, can keep being developed and keep expressing itself really throughout your life.
I love that. So what a great place to end. We are just coming into the wrap-up here, and inspiring others by being in your presence. And I want to share, I think, I'm going to guess in your practice you share, people in relationships can come in, one can more lead the other into the space of going closer and creating the spiritually conscious relationship. And I know that you all share that as you talk to couples. One person, the man or woman, could be the one that just really embraces the divine, but then the other, by being in their presence, just comes alive. And
yes.
So the dance can start with just one, because I know I talk to many who say, well, I'm experiencing this, but my husband isn't, or my wife isn't, and very often, in fact, most of the time, both can come together if you're just patient and just embody it as you share, Katie. Well, let's go into the wrap-up. Unfortunately, we're out of time, so we better start with your web address. Where can people go to learn more about you and your programs?
They can go to www.hendricks, HENDRICKS.com. They can also go to our other website, which is foundationforconsciousliving.com, where they can find more experiences and stories of transformation about responsibility, appreciation, and authenticity, and how to make those real in your life. And we also have a Facebook page where we give relationship tips and videos on a regular basis, and that is at facebook.com/relationshipadvice.
Okay, fantastic. So there's also a Hendricks Facebook page and the Foundation for Conscious Living. Hendricks.com was the first one that Katie mentioned. I'm here with Gay and Katie Hendricks. Be sure to check out their sites. They've got so many books that are incredible. Conscious Loving, The Journey to Co-Commitment is one of their incredible books that I love. I've got it right here with me.
If you'd like to receive all of our new podcast episodes, please click on the subscribe button. To find out more about Humanities Team Transformational Education Programs and about how you can help support our mission, please visit us online at humanitiesteam.org, where you can also sign up for our email list so we can let you know about our free online events and other news about what we're up to each week. And again, if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review. Thank you.